Hello and welcome to the DSR Daily. I'm David Rothkopf. I'm joined by Riley Fessler. Good morning, Riley. How are you?
Good weather this weekend.
Good
So
weather.
enjoyed that. Not too hot in DC.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed that. I was out of DC, and the weather where I was meh. And also joined by Minna Stein. How are you, Minna?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Well, good. It's June. I don't understand how it got to be June. There was no spring. I think we literally were robbed of having a spring. But I remain optimistic that sanity will return to the weather or the country. Or, no, I'm not optimistic, actually. I'm just learning to live with insanity. But that's why everybody comes here, convenes, listens to you guys, and you provide insight into the world. So, Riley, are you going to start us off today, or is Minna?
I've got us started today.
Okay.
The Supreme Court's traditional June ruling season has been disrupted by an influx of emergency cases tied to President Trump's second term, handled through the so-called ShadowDocket. These fast-moving, often late-night decisions lack the transparency and detailed reasoning of the regular merits docket, but carry significant real-world impact. The justices have already ruled on numerous Trump-related emergency cases, including immigration and military policies, while the merits docket remains lighter than usual. Experts suggest the shadow docket may soon become the court's new norm, reflecting a shifting priorities and the increasing urgency of politically charged legal disputes.
Well, it also offers a way for them to make decisions less visibly, less transparently. Given the predilections of the majority on the court, to do things that are political, that are not founded in the law, that drift away from precedent, that invent new legal theories as they go, the shadow docket offers a nice home for that. But don't despair. I think by the end of this month, you will see a number of major court decisions that also do these things, that also drift from precedent, ignore it altogether, make up new legal theories, and result in rulings that are politically designed to support the president or the MAGA movement, or to constrain or undermine priorities that they view as the priorities of the opposition. Because this court has lost its moorings, and we will see that once again in most, not all, but in most of the decisions coming from the court this June. If they get it done in time, they could peek over into July as they have in the past. Minute.
A man carried out a violent incendiary attack during a pro-Israeli hostage demonstration in Boulder, Colorado, injuring several people after throwing bottles with flammable liquid. The suspect is in custody, and while federal officials are calling it a potential terror attack, local authorities are still investigating the motive, including possible mental health factors. The FBI, federal prosecutors, and the National Counterterrorism Center are actively involved, with charges likely forthcoming as the incident has drawn national and international condemnation.
Well, as well it should. Attacking people who are peacefully protesting is appalling. Trying to burn them alive, worse. I think we don't know enough about the individual in question to understand the motives fully. It looks like an act of anti-Semitism, but it certainly behooves us to figure out who this guy was, why he did it, was he insane, and so forth. I have to suggest that if you're trying to burn people alive, you're probably insane. But we will wait and see. But I think the condemnation is called for, as is any attack on any innocent individual for political or other reasons. I think that's the thought that we need to keep squarely in our minds. Riley?
Russia and Ukraine met in Istanbul for a second round of peace talks, though hopes for progress were low amid escalating violence. Ukraine launched a drone attack on 4 distant Russian air bases, damaging over 40 warplanes in what President Zelensky called a brilliant operation. In response, Russia unleashed its largest drone assault on Ukraine since the war began, targeting civilian areas. Despite ongoing diplomacy, both sides remain far apart on key issues, and heavy fighting continues along the front lines.
Yeah, well, I mean, ongoing diplomacy, sounds like active diplomacy or diplomatic progress. We're not there yet. These sides are entrenched in their positions. I'm certainly more sympathetic to the Ukrainian position, which is to say Russia invaded the country 11 years ago, up to the invasion 3 years ago, and has no business being anywhere in Ukraine, and they should leave. And if the people want the war to be over, the Russians should leave. I think the biggest story here is that the Ukrainians pulled off this amazing operation over the weekend, which destroyed something in excess of a third of Russia's active strategic bomber fleet. These are bombers that are used to launch cruise missiles into Ukraine. They're also bombers that are part of Russia's strategic nuclear force. And they did it with real deftness, moving containers that contain lots of drones deep, deep, deep into Russia, deploying them near airfields. Then the Ukrainian operatives apparently left Russia, and then the entire operation was carried out remotely to absolutely devastating effect. The Russians, of course, are either minimizing it or saying now this calls for even greater brutality against Russia. But what the move does is drive home the point that Donald Trump was wrong when he said Ukraine had no cards to play. Ukraine's got the most important card of them all. It's playing for its survival. Ukraine is playing for its life. It has shown enormous creativity in using drones and other next-gen technologies, is a leader now in those technologies by necessity, and is rewriting the books of how conflicts will be conducted with operations like this one. And, I think all credit to them. There's no defense for what Russia is doing politically or morally. And I'm glad to see that their military defenses are very nearly as weak.
Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller said interest rate cuts are still possible later in 2025, even as tariffs under the Trump administration are expected to temporarily raise inflation. Waller emphasized that if inflation continues to trend towards the Fed's 2% goal and labor markets remain strong, he would support rate cuts, viewing tariff-driven inflation as likely short-lived. He also warned that higher tariffs could eventually dampen consumer spending and employment, but said current inflation expectations remain stable and do not yet signal broader economic deterioration.
Don't know what this guy is analyzing, right? How does he know what tariff levels are going to be? He doesn't. The only thing we know about Trump's tariffs is that they are irrational, that they are imposed erratically, they are removed erratically. And we don't know, by the way, that Trump always chickens out. He has chickened out a number of times. But after every time he's chickened out, he said, I'm going to up these tariffs, or these high tariffs are going to stay, and so forth. And he still seems committed to a path of using tariffs as a tool. Well, that's super destabilizing for world markets. But the notion that somehow this is a short-lived phenomenon, maybe it should be. It's terrible policy. But if it's not, it's inflationary. And if inflation continues to go up, what we've traditionally seen from the Fed is increases in interest rates, not decreases. And, that could happen again here. Certainly, the Fed's in a very difficult position, particularly given that the President of the United States is jawboning the Fed whenever he gets the chance, trying to intimidate them. One of the few places, however, that the Supreme Court has put down a marker about lines that Trump should not try to cross has to do with the issue of removing people from the Fed and trying to persuade it to move to his positions. They were clear that they thought the Fed was in a special category. We'll see, but I don't put a lot of stock in what this guy says because it's not founded in anything but speculation. So wait, see, Riley.
Karol Nawrocki, a right-wing nationalist backed by Poland's Law and Justice Party and endorsed by Donald Trump, narrowly won Poland's presidential runoff with 50.9% of the vote. The result deals a major blow to centrist Prime Minister Donald Tusk and strengthens Europe's populist movement. Nawrocki's victory creates a power split as the presidency can veto legislation, potentially obstructing Tusk's government despite its parliamentary majority. His election is expected to deepen political gridlock and frustrate efforts to reform Poland's judiciary and restore democratic institutions.
Yeah, it's a bad development. I think the victory was, as Riley indicated, just over 1 percentage point victory. So it was very, very close. The country is divided. The right wing in Poland has always been a factor to be contended with. And clearly, the fact that Trump backs this guy is a sign that he is a nationalist, that he is going to be an impediment where it comes to matters of EU strengthening and unity, that he could be an impediment with regard to issues associated with EU security. But I think we also have to remember that Poland is a frontline state when it comes to Russian aggression, and that feelings in Poland about the threat of Russia extend much more broadly than this kind of a narrow victory. Clearly, any further threats from the Russians are likely to weaken this guy. We've just we're in a wait and see, and as Riley says, it's a split government, not a positive development, that is for sure. But having said that, there are enough constraints on his power and the power of the Polish right that we should also note that their ability to get big things done is likely quite limited. So that's it. That's it for today. It's Monday. We look forward to the week ahead. We'll do some deep dives in areas that we've talked about here, including, I think, what the meaning of this Ukrainian attack on Russia. And we'll have all of our usual podcasts, whether it's this DSR Daily, or whether it's the Daily Blast, or it's Deep State Radio, or it's Words Matter, or it's Still Consciousness, or it's our AI Energy and Climate podcast, or it's our Need to Know podcast. So if you want to support those, go to the dsrnetwork.com, click on membership, become a member, support what we're doing. We appreciate your support. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.